Hello friends, it is me, Dan Phelps. Welcome to the third installment in my series on looping and using the Chase Bliss audio blooper in particular. This week we're going to talk about using the layer and repeat knobs on the blooper to loop compositionally and to think in terms of arrangement when you're using your looping device. So stay tuned. So this week, let's talk about two knobs on the blooper. There's a knob called layers, and there's a knob called repeats. I'll explain repeats first because I think it's the most straightforward. But basically, on the blooper, when the repeats knob is all the way up, pointing to this tiny little infinity sign that's on here, your loop will go on forever. It will repeat infinitely, if you will. As you begin to back the repeat knob down, what's stored in your looper will begin to gradually get quieter and quieter until it disappears. If you turn the knob way down, it'll disappear more quickly, kind of like a delay rather than a looping pedal. This Mineko Sweet 16 recreation of the Electro-Harmonix 16-second digital delay does something similar. The thing that's cool about this is once you've done a fair amount of inputting sound into your looper and you've built up a texture or a mood, you might be wondering, how do I move on from this? I may not want to just switch it off in a hard way. That may not be the musical effect I'm going for. So if you have a control like the repeats knob on the blooper, you can dial that back and continue to play new material into the looper, basically overtaking the old stuff as it gets quieter and quieter. This allows you to kind of do essentially a slow crossfade between the stuff you've already recorded and the new stuff you're playing in. People don't usually realize there's a transition happening until you're pretty far into it. It's pretty neat. So with the repeat knob set all the way up, blooper functions like a standard looper where anything you capture will just repeat infinitely, like this. This will go on to infinity and eventually drive you insane. However, if you turn down the repeat knob, when you go back into record, what's stored in your looper will eventually disappear. The reason that this is so useful is that it gives you a smooth way of transitioning from one sound or texture to another, because as the previous texture or loop is being slowly erased, you can play new information over top of it, kind of sort of making a seamless crossfade or a kind of psychedelic effect. For example, I'll record something that's kind of angular and weird and slowly erase it while playing something that's a little bit more beautiful and pastoral. Let's give it a whirl. I'll overdub something to this too. So, say that my audience and myself is getting sick of this. What I'll do now is turn the repeat knob down, let's just do halfway, and slowly record new things over top of this loop. Now this loop is locked into the blooper for my next round of improvising over it or whatever happens next. A control that is fairly unique to the blooper is the layers knob, which basically allows you to go back in time through the different layers that you've recorded. Every time you put the blooper into overdub mode and turn it back off, it creates layers. And by sweeping the layers knob, you're able to sort of travel through them, which is really cool because you can basically use this to create arrangements based on adding and subtracting different elements of the loop. I'll give you a practical example of what this looks like. The layer knob is a unique feature in that every time I go into overdub and record something new on my loop, it's stored as another layer. And as long as it's turned all the way up, you're going to hear all of those layers simultaneously. However, turning it back down allows you to sort of crossfade or turn off the top layers as you go until you're basically back at where you started. Here's an example. Now I'll overdub something on top of that. And I'll add another layer. And another. And maybe one more. Now watch as I turn down the layer knob. Super cool. It's really powerful because it allows you to kind of make arrangements by adding and subtracting different layers. Using these in conjunction, you can do some pretty powerful on-the-fly creation. this gets into something that I'm super passionate about, which is not just using looping as a practice tool or kind of the standard, I played a rhythm or a beat on the guitar and now I'm going to layer on top of that or solo over that or sing over that, but truly using it as a texture generating, music making, sound conjuring device that you play almost as much as you play the guitar. When you interface with the looper, you're actually playing it like an instrument. That's something I care about a lot. It's something I've been working on for a long time. And I'm excited because all of these features are something that I use fairly regularly in Ableton Live, but it's amazing to have it jammed into a tiny little pedal that I can have on my pedal board. So if you combine the possibilities of thinking in terms of arrangement and flow and transition with your loops, with the Blooper's ability to radically transform the sounds that you have captured in there via its modifiers. If you haven't seen my video about the modifiers and the additive mode on the Blooper, I'll put a link somewhere right here for you to jump back to that. But the combination of the layer and repeat knobs along with the additive mode and the modifiers makes this basically a full-fledged musical instrument. That's it for this week. I'm Dan, and you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook with lots of additional mindset, looping, guitar content of all kinds. I'll put the links in the show notes below. Thank you for watching. I'm so grateful that you would take the time to absorb this content, and I hope it's really useful for you and leads to a lot of inspiration and creativity in your playing. Whatever you're discovering, or if you have any questions, please feel free to mention that in the comments below, because I'd love to hear from you. Tune in next week where I dig into the Blooper's sampler mode.